Hey guys, it's Eric here at Farpoint Farms. Check it out, I got a new Baofeng to play with. Man, I haven't messed with one of these things in forever. This is the Baofeng UV-7B. It's in like a baby blue color, it's kind of cool. And they've added a lot of stuff to these over the years. You know, Baofeng hit the market by storm, what about close to 10 years, if not more. And they've really just dominated the walkie-talkie market ever since. Motorola and Kenwood and all the other players really have had to play catch up ever since. And honestly, I don't know that they really have done a great job of that. Not that everyone doesn't make great radios, but Baofeng just did it on a budget, like a really good budget, and was able to come in there and kind of steal the market. Like I said, it's nothing personal, but it's the truth. All right, let's set that aside here. Here we are, and here's the radio. It is definitely different than previous Baofengs. You know, it's a little larger, a little easier to read, it looks like to me anyway. Go ahead and get that in there. All right, and we have a nice screw and antenna here, antenna. Get that loaded on there. It does come with a wall wart, which is nice, a USB cable. It is USB-C for charging. No cradle. Does look like it has a spot for one, but it doesn't come with that. It must be an accessory you have to purchase. Now, one thing I'm seeing on the bottom of this, two fairly decent sized looking LEDs, so it must have light capabilities. It does have a belt clip, but again requires a screwdriver, which I don't have currently, and a wrist clip, which slides in there, and Vox equipment here, push to talk, and mic and earbuds. So that's really cool. All right, so the UV-7B amateur radio. Oh boy. We got a bunch of stuff here, and I'm not going to get into everything here because that would just take all day, but let's go through the basics here. So it is a tri-band radio. It will transmit on 136 to 174, 220 to 260, and 400 to 480 megahertz. So not a bad coverage list here for a little handheld. That being said, I'm not sure that's really got the right antenna for it, so maybe something you want to look into to get a better antenna if you're going to, get all those frequencies on transmit. It also receives a whole bunch more. So VHF 136 to 174, 220 to 260, and then UHF 350 to 390, 400 to 520. In the AM band, we have 108 to 136, and then we have conventional FM terrestrial mode. I think it's like 85 to 108, something like that. 5 watts of output power, so not a small amount of juice going out of there. One of the things that will absolutely blows me away anyway, 1,000 channel capacity. So most people are going to program this with a program called Chirp. It's one of the reasons I'm not going to get too deep into this because honestly, I should just make a separate video on how to use Chirp. That is where you're going to find all the channels that you want. Well, that's where you're going to program everything in, right? You're going to go to a place like Radio Reference, and you're going to find your local repeaters in your area if you're lucky enough to have access to a repeater in your area. You can find, just the call channels, all the things that you're going to find either through ham radio clubs or through Radio Reference or a combination of both. You can enter all that stuff in there, and then using Chirp, you can program that to this device. So you don't have to sit here and peck away at the keys on this to program in channel after channel after channel. I found that RadioReference.com has been a huge benefit to me as far as like some of the programming that I've done here on the farm. Also, Chirp will work for those reception stations as well because you can program that in. So while this is in no way, shape, or form a police scanner or anything like that, it does have the ability to be picking up other stations that you can't transmit on but you may want to listen to, if that makes sense. So, all right. I'm trying to think of anything else here that's really important to talk about before we get closer in on it, and I don't really think I know of any. So I guess I'll get into, the coolness of the radio itself or what it has, and I'll move the camera closer in here in a second. But overall, it's a good-looking radio. It's got, I don't know. I don't know if it says it's waterproof anywhere on here, but it's got, the rubber sides covering everything up. So dustproof perhaps would be a better connection for that. Up here on top, we have our connection. Now, if you're going to program with Chirp, this is how you're going to program. You don't program through the USB charging port on this. This still has conventional programming cabling, and so that's where you're going to program in on that. And on this side, we have push to talk. We have a function button that's programmable, and looks like a flashlight button here, which I don't know if this thing's going to turn on for me. We'll try it. I think you have to have the key on. Let's turn it on. Yeah. So that's actually not a bad light, honestly. And we got a strobe function as well. Hopefully I didn't just give anyone a seizure by that. Sorry about that if I did. And that's about it. Good looking radio. There for the battery charger itself, if you look back here, one last port. And so USB direct charge off the back if you're not on a base. If you are on a base, you can see the 2 contacts back there for that. Okay, all right, let me get the camera closer and we'll take a closer look at this radio. Again, not going to go through everything, but I'll highlight some of the features and functions that it has. If you played with Baofeng radios at all before, then this would all be fairly familiar to you. There's the bonus, and I'll turn it on here, you can see. Well, one of the big changes there is that's a guy's voice. Most of the Baofengs are usually female voices, but they've switched to kind of a low-tone male voice, which I think is interesting, an interesting choice. And the screen is larger. Now, one of the complaints I had with the little Baofeng, UV-5, whatever the first one they came out with, they must have sold 1 trillion of before it turned out it was not really legal to be sold here, was that it had a pretty small screen on there. And the buttons were also a little smaller than stock. I find this to be a lot nicer as far as a lot more, well, how do I say that? Made for American hands, perhaps? Would that be reasonable to say? Anyway, let's get the camera closer and let's take a look. All right, well, here we are up close. Again, it does come with your regular earphone equipment here if you're interested in that. Plug that in. We've got a nice clip. We have our earpiece, and we have a microphone with a push to transmit there, so that's really nice. Wall wart, USB-C cable. Band for your belt band, belt clip, and a wristband there. Main unit here, detachable antenna, obviously. Pretty standard there. It looks like, is that a GPS signal there? I'm not sure. But it does have a light up button here, so when we transmit, we're able to see that we're transmitting. Cool. All right, so flashlight button over here, push to talk, and a function key. Earphone and microphone jacks here. USB charging port here. And that pretty much covers the outside. There's a flashlight. Those are pretty decent LEDs. Obviously, having studio lighting on here makes it a little harder for you to see some of that stuff, but I'm telling you, I'm going to move the camera down just a bit. I'm telling you, that's something else. All right, let's turn her on.
Channel mode.
And we have dual zone, so right now, you can see we got that. Screen goes off pretty quickly, I will say that. Lock button. We have weather channels, of course.
0 mode.
All right, you can kind of hear the guy's voice there. Up on the right here, before this goes off, we have a battery indicator and a nice color screen. Channel up and down.
9, 10, 11, 12.
Right, push to talk. If I hit talk, the red light comes on, and you can see that. And you can see the TX with our power button if I'm looking at the actual screen. Let's see what else we got here. So we can get into the menu and we can look at zones. If we want to get into scan, that's something we can do there. Frequency range, scan mode. I mean, this thing is going to give you everything you need to, right? What do we turn out of that? Let's get into wireless CPS. Do we want to have that on and off? We'll leave it off for now. And then we can get down into radio settings. What's the step? How quickly do we wish to switch between frequencies? We'll have to go down there pretty quick. Then we have squelch. You can change the squelch. I'm actually going to turn the squelch down a little bit. All right, so now it's there. We'll go down to power save. I don't want to do power save.
Enter.
And we can go into Vox. I'm going to skip over Vox, obviously. Vox level, Vox switch, Vox delay, time on top, time on answer, voice commands, language, Roger beep, of course. Let's get that beep going.
Enter.
Right on. Do we want the beep? I'm actually going to turn the beep off.
Enter.
All right. Backlighting, yeah, let's change that. It's very slow. I want this thing to stay on. So we'll hit it with 15 seconds there. That's a nicer amount of time. Power on display. Yeah, let's see what we got there. Picture or voltage. Yeah, I want to keep the picture on there. Dual watch. Do we want dual watch on? I'm going to say off on that. Auto lock. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't want to really do that. Alarm mode. On site. Send. Yeah, let's just, our alarm will just be here. We don't want that going out over the air. The alarm tone, we could actually change that. I'm going to leave that alone. Anti-edit, that one, I'm not sure. DTMF-ST, PTT ID, so you can actually enter in what you want there. PTT delay, alert, and I don't know, is that a weather alert? Okay, no, we don't want that. So I'm gonna get out of that. Tail, press SK2, I'm not sure what that one is, and reset. So quite a bit out of that mess, isn't that crazy? And programming channels can be done locally. Channel name, frequency, transmit power, all those things are available locally. Again, that's just kind of a lot of work to do that. So I highly recommend Chirp. Now, another cool thing, I have no actual idea how you would go about doing this, but there's a Bluetooth app for this. So you have Bluetooth information that you can get into here, download some software, and use your phone to program this thing. Whether or not that actually works well, that's something you'll have to let me know. I don't play with phones much, and so I would say I'm just going to stick with Chirp on this thing. Radio is, I waited too long on that. Firmware version is 0.06, hardware version is 1.0. So a pretty new setup here. And that's it, we're back to it. So let's get out of that. We'll return out of that. There we go. So we're back in it, right?
13, 14, 15, 16.
Nice. Nice. And this also does have weather channels, if I didn't point that out earlier. So you do have the ability to get weather band. So it's a pretty nice little setup. I would say Baofeng, as far as the radio company, now they always produced a pretty decent quality product. This one, though, they really upped their game. Compared to the last Baofeng I played with, and granted, that's been a couple years, probably been 4 or 5 years since I played with an actual Baofeng. This is miles away a better radio for sure. Just the quality of it anyway. Awesome. Well, I'll leave a link to where you can pick one of these up, and I will see you next time. Take care.